Buenos días a todos y todas los participantes, las participantes de este evento que forma parte de las jornadas de cine-ensayo que estamos llevando a cabo desde el programa de cine de la Universidad de Itela. Hoy tenemos una conversación con uno de los grandes cineastas del cine contemporáneo, que es Radu Jude, de Rumania, que se está comunicando con nosotros desde su casa en Bucarest. Esto será en inglés, les aclaro.
Hola.
Hola, Radu. Y vamos a poner las preguntas que tengan, que vayan surgiendo, las pueden ir anotando en el chat. Abajo buscan el icono de chat y luego se las iremos transmitiendo a Radu. La idea es que esto dure aproximadamente una hora, puede ser unos minutos más. Así que vamos al inglés. Radu, it is really a joy to have you with us. We have been watching your recent films and have found them extremely stimulating in this context of the film essay, which is a kind of amorphous entity. I have here this our friend Theodor Adorno, who says several things about the essay, and many of them seem to fit your film. You know, one of the things that Adorno says about the essay, he's talking about the literary essay, but I think it applies in this case, is the one of the laws of the essay is heresy. Yes,
I know the quote. Yeah. And also he says that it's fragmentary and that it thinks in fragments. And well, first of all, sorry to interrupt you, and thank you for the invitation here, especially because although I never been to Argentina, I feel a very deep connection with Argentinian culture in general, because like many of my generation, I was formed in a way by literature, like the books of Borges, of Ernesto Sabato, of Julio Cortázar, and many others great writers from Argentina. For me, I dreamt Buenos Aires because of Sobre Héroes y Tumbas by Sabato, which takes place in Buenos Aires. So I never been in Buenos Aires, but I have a imaginary Buenos Aires in my mind. And of course, there's also new Argentinian cinema, which is very important, and also some friends like Roger Cosa, who's a friend, and now you, I think. So thank you so much for the invitation here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you and your films intervene in this notion of the film essay, because very often the film essay is associated with some kind of seriousness and a serious face and solemnity. And I was especially pleased to open these days of essay film with these kind of porn images from Bad Luck Banging or Loony Porn, which is the film we saw yesterday. So I thought it was is there something you deliberately went out for in this film that is a little different from previous films?
Well, it's a bit complicated to group an answer into that. But first of all, I would say that I'm really happy that you invited the film in this essay films category, because of course now, as you know, there's a lot of people from academic world trying to define what is an essay and the cinematical essay, and from their point of view, if there isn't a voiceover in the first person narration, etc., then there is not a film essay in itself. And I find this kind of discussions very interesting, but also somehow useless, because I think Adorno has it right in that essay about what is an essay. And I think it's very much related with the knowledge of today, and of the technologies of today, and of the images of the world, and of the science of today, because after nuclear physics, etc., it's very difficult to have this kind of totalitarian view and totality, to view things in a totality way. And one of the things, if I remember well, because I haven't read it recently, that Adorno is advocating there is the fact that an essay doesn't try to be a masterpiece, doesn't try to make a totality, but on the contrary, it stays fragmentary. It's like a broken mirror on the street, and in each of the pieces you see reflected a fragment of reality. And from this point of view, I would say that the film I've done, it is an essay, because it doesn't try to be to offer a totality, a view which is like Matei mai încet, te rog frumos, which is not total. I'm sorry, it's my kid here. It's not a totality. It doesn't offer a totality, and it's fragmentary. And there's also something more. I remember now that in the 60s, I think it was 65 or 66, Italo Calvino, the Italian writer, took part in a how it's called, a discussion in Cahiers du Cinéma. And I think it's one of the first times that the term film essay appears, but not necessarily with the definition of today, like in academia of today, but like your definition. And he mentions there that for him a film essay were all the films of the Nouvelle Vague, of the New Wave. And he says something important. For a film to be a film essay, in his point of view, this film should do something in different domains like sociology, anthropology, philosophy, history, etc., but in a way using the tools of cinema, so in a way that the domain, the disciplines of philosophy, history, etc., cannot do. So the idea is to use a camera and montage and what is cinema in a way that you can offer this essay in a way that cannot be made with words only. So this is somehow the guiding principle of everything that I do in the last years, good or bad. That doesn't have any importance. And there's even something more, because we all know, I mean, we both know, and probably our friends as well, how strange, how terrible are the financing systems of today in cinema, where you have, on the contrary, not to have an essay attitude towards things, but on the contrary, to have a kind of narrative or documentary, doesn't matter, narrative or documentary, doesn't matter, but to have an attitude that is very, very non-essayistic, on the contrary, to be rounded, to be full. So the experiment and essays are not encouraged, on the contrary, are discouraged towards that. And I think that's true everywhere, even in literature. If you think that although literature and poetry is much more free, maybe because they have a longer history, like also visual arts like painting, etc. But let's not forget that the first novels like Gargantua and Pantagruel or Don Quixote or I don't know, Tristram Shandy, it's a mix of narrative and essay. So from the beginning, even literature had these essayistic elements in it, and then it was gradually lost with Balzac and what happens after that, theater plays, etc.
I think that there's something that in what you just said that is very clear in the film, in the way we are introduced into, aside from that opening with the sex scene, we follow the main character, Amy, I think her name, is walking through the streets of Bucharest, very busy streets, on the way somewhere, and the camera follows her like it would in a normal fiction film for a while, but then seems to be distracted, not by something that she is looking at, but by something the camera notices, be it often a billboard or an old building in ruins, or something that calls the attention of the camera. I think this is an example of what you were saying, of something that would be impossible to write, I think, in an essay. And I think that this idea of putting us into the situation of a fictional character that we are following, and then somehow distracting ourselves is a way of I think introducing the essay simply by a camera movement.
Yes, in a way, I think you're right. I think there's also some maybe, or the origin of that was also something else. The fact that we are used, to consider a character as an isolated individual, let's say, and even in dramaturgy, we are always told, or we learn, how to build a character, etc., etc. But then even in science, if you, I mean, biology or these things, if you think about, if you read a book about birds, it's impossible to speak about a bird, to describe a bird without speaking about the environment. Which kind of forest this bird lives in, what does she eat, who are other birds around, how is the weather in which the birds live. So we can see that to isolate an individual like that, it's just a mental operation. Of course, the individual has the possibility to have an act and to go around by its own will, but there's no individual in a way without environment or something like that. And so in a way, it is essay, as you say, if you see it in this way. But I can argue that it's only the description of the character. Is that, but because the character is this woman, and this the space, the geographical space around, is part of her, is part of her world, is who she is, what she eats, etc. Like if we would describe an animal in a scientific way. So in a way, it was all these things together and something more, like we spoke a little bit before between us, the fact that there are some cities, or I mean city. I think the language is tricky with us, because we name something like a city, like how you say it, a ciudad in Spanish, a city, but a city doesn't really exist. A city is also a concept. We have buildings, we have trees, we have people, we have laws, and politicians, etc. And they are put together, and we consider this like a monolith, a city, but a city doesn't really exist. A city is the mix of all these things. But even if we accept it in a traditional, in a conventional way, and call it a city, then there are cities where you can see, that expose themselves, are a little bit easy to understand how they are. If you just take a stroll into a city, you can really see what's behind, what kind of values, what kind of people. I'm always, completely in love with the Mediterranean city, where people are on the street all the time, etc. And when you go in Vienna or in Sweden, you don't see anything. Everything is behind closed doors, etc. So Bucharest is somehow in the middle. It's a city where, because of the chaos, because of the chaotic development, because of the problems, enormous problems it has, it was always, and it still is, from the capitals of European Union, the worst, always. I mean, in the last 20 years, it's always the worst. Always, when you look, every year they make, a top
statistics.
A statistic with which city are the best and which city are the worst, and Bucharest is always the last one, always. So and because it's the last one, because it's so chaotic, the values, the problems behind are more visible. So if you have a camera and just look around, you can see much more things. I went to Geneva Film Festival in Switzerland. It was like this film, it was impossible to make it there. It was nothing, to see. It was everybody was inside. There was no traffic, only banks. Well, maybe that was what that was. Yeah. So this is how this sequence, this long scene came about. But also, I think it's related, because you mentioned Adorno, but the title of this part is One Way Street, which is, of course, a famous Walter Benjamin. Also a book which is very weird, because you can call it a philosophy book, but it doesn't look like a philosophy book. It's a mixture of experimental literature with philosophy and with an essay itself. And Benjamin, as we know, was always extremely careful towards how you call the semiotics of the urban elements. He always, and I think this is the job of philosopher, and also the job of the artist, to look careful at the things that, serious people don't look at these things. I mean, like Benjamin, wrote about songs, or Adorno wrote about songs, or about toys, or about radio, which was new at the time. All these things that doesn't seem like an important element for philosophy, and his ideas influenced very much this film. First part, second part.
I think so. Like, for instance, radio is no longer new, but maybe certain social media are like TikTok or things like that, which I don't really know what it is, but my daughter, I think, is on that, so I
know, and I'm fascinated.
Well, I imagine, because the middle section of the film is divided into 3 parts. The second section, we could call it, is this dictionary, which is very interesting, because Adorno gives this example of the essay. Says, if you were to go into a foreign city without knowing the language, and you started learning it simply by experience, by listening to each word in its context, and the same word in 10 or 30 different contexts, you would understand the language much better than if you studied it with a dictionary. And so he says the essay is like learning a language without a dictionary. And so it's very funny that in your film there is this dictionary, which to me is some kind of crazy TikTok. How is your relation to this kind of media?
Well, it's not very clear, of course, because we are in the middle of it, and not very defined. because, but I'm more, as you say, actually cinema, or to get back at the film a little bit, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that this section of the film, the dictionary, has it's connected somehow with a TikTok sensibility or a TikTok kind of attitude, which is true, or aesthetics. But in the same time, it's something very old as well, because, you know, Flaubert already has a dictionary of received ideas. Ambrose Bierce have a dictionary of the devil, and there are many other examples. And but in the same time, I think it shows that it's always in the old forms, and I'm interested in what is old very much, not like a conservative aesthetical attitude, but on the contrary, like Tristan Tzara, the father of Dada movement, used to say, I look new things, new ideas in old things. And I think that's very important, because sometimes in all things, if you look at them or read them or whatever, you see the possibilities. It's like watching silent movies today. Many young people, some young people I know, like students, I would say, well, even my kids, you know, they don't like silent films or black and white films because they are old, etc. But sometimes the possibilities that existed in the silent films or in the old films are not all of them developed. And especially when you look from the history, with a historical look at the silent film, you can see possibilities there which can give you ideas for something. I don't know. Or maybe not, but you can see the possibilities, you can see the potentialities of the things. So I think that's also very important, and that's very the same thing can be said about new technologies, because all of a sudden, if you pay attention to them, you can reframe them by I wanted to show you something, but I go in a minute. The question of reframing things are extremely important, because if we consider cinema or art to be only something extremely, you know, a cinema that you see in a cinema hall, a documentary film, a fiction film, an essay film, then I think it's correct, it's okay, but we are limiting ourselves. Because I think what's interesting, and I think this is a question that exists also in the nature of the materials, but more in the attitude towards it. Because like Eisenstein, you know, if you read Eisenstein considered cinema everything. If he read the Pushkin poem, he would speak about how it's the dramaturgy in the lyrics. If he watched El Greco paintings, he would speak about the montage in El Greco paintings. And everything for Eisenstein was cinema. And just one second, and I come to show you something. It was in another room, and I didn't know I would use it. There is, speaking of that, you know, there is a guy called Bernd Porter who wrote a lot of so-called found poems. Bernd Porter was a physicist. He was, you know, with Oppenheimer and the other people in Manhattan Project. But then he became a poet, and he wrote this kind of I mean, he didn't write, he collected what he considered to be found poems. And for instance, you can find, and he considered them real poems. I mean, he published like that, you know, things like that. He would say, this is a poem, you see, or he will put sometimes something like this, and he would say, this is a poem. Which, of course, is not a poem. Sometimes it's, you know, a kind of things like that. But this is part of his poetry book, you see, or sometimes even technical things like this. You know, it's a kind of a physics circuits or something. And all of a sudden, for me, this poet and this book, Found Poems, is very important because it. Of course, the first reaction would be to say, "Come on, this is not a poem. Fuck you. This is not poetry. I know what poetry looks like, or something like that. This is not poetry." You know, but because he names it poetry, he names it Found Poems, and if you try to look at it as poetry, and you really try to think what makes it poetry and what is a poetry, and then after you go all the pages and you think of it, all of a sudden you would find that everything can be framed as poetry. You know, this is a poem. Look, you know. And I think that's a very important frame of mind, because it makes, or for me at least, I don't know, I wouldn't say maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but for me it works because all of a sudden it makes you, if you go out in the street now I'm much more, all of a sudden I see things with a different frame. If there's a stupid commercial or some people talking or something, I see, well, this is a poem. This is not something boring. This is a poem. Or if I go in the supermarket, I'm not only buying, I don't know, mineral water and the Coca-Cola, but I see poetry around. So poetry exists only if you want to see it as poetry. And I think this is true of cinema. Cinema is all around. It's only our problem as filmmakers. I don't know, because we are under so many pressure from financing, from audience, from ourselves, from our history, and from our history of thinking, that this is why I in one of my talks I would like to speak about Andy Warhol cinema, because the way Warhol did it was to consider everything cinema in the same way, and really to accept it like that, and to be brave enough to say, well, this is a film. Well, where everybody would say, no, this is not a film. So I think that's the questions. That's the big question, to find this cinema and to have the courage to accept it and to express it there, to record it or to make it or to show it, even if people would reject it at some point. You know, this is of course very difficult because we depend, our lives, our professional lives depend on that. But I think nowadays this is why for me TikTok is very important, because if I open TikTok, there is a kind of things that you don't find on in real cinema, because it's much slower, the cinema. It doesn't go in these places, you know. Look, you don't find these things, these people. Doesn't matter what they say, it's just the kind of people that you don't find in real cinema, in professional cinema, you know, or jokes, or yeah. So all of a sudden you have access in a very brute way, in a very primitive way to a world. And cinema, because of the problems of financing, because it's a very heavy mechanism. It's a very complicated mechanism. You know, it's amazing that somebody can make a TikTok movie in 3 minutes, you know, just record it and post it. And for me to make a film, it takes 3 years or something like that. It's a very unbalanced, although I can do it in a one day myself. Like you said, I'm really curious, because you said that you make a school where people are making one film a week, and this is something I think very important and very very good and very in tune with the possibilities of today. We are still, although the technology allows us to be much flexible, we are somehow still behaving like 100 years ago in a way. That makes me remember, you know, that the first cars, when they made the first cars, I read about that they still had a place for whip, to put the whip, to whip the horses, although there were no horses anymore, of course, but it's still, the whip was there, or the place for the whip, you see, because we are like that a little bit now.
Yeah.
In between.
What was your inspiration, or how did you come up with the idea of this dictionary? Is it possible to explain? Because my jaw had already dropped at the beginning with the initial sex scene, and then when the dictionary started, I had to pick up my jaw again, and it fell a second time.
Yeah, well, actually, it was a process much that has a logic in it. Of course, not everything is logical. This is why makes it difficult to explain it in a rational way, because I was always gathering materials. If I can share a screen, I can show you. Maybe I always have for instance a kind of this kind of folders with, doesn't matter, with images of all kinds. This is some Goya that I want to make a short film with those. So I always have this kind of things. Doesn't matter what you need, but I collect things. I collect things that I want to use, or that I find inspiration in, or all kinds of things. And sometimes I collect things which I collect them related to a specific project or to something. And for this one, for instance, I think I have it from here. I have a lot of things that I collected during the years. Some I didn't use it. I don't remember like what it is. This was something that I didn't use. The new words of COVID is somebody that it was, in 2020, just the beginning of the COVID. Or images, well, that's from the film itself, or that's from the film as well. All kinds of things that I haven't. For instance, this one, which I haven't used, but somehow gives me an idea. It was the desire of a child from a school. What she wants, and it's from the countryside in Romania. It's very poor, and many areas in the countryside the schools don't have toilets, and the first desire that she has is to have toilets in the school. A kid. This says something. All this kind of. I'm interested in things which are not they don't remain, they don't make the history, so to speak. It's very little. For instance, here it says that some deaf kids, people who didn't who cannot hear, were asked to make a text about how do you prepare a speech from your personal experience. But these are people who cannot have a speech. It's completely, these kind of things. I always collect all kinds of things that I didn't, I use them or I didn't use. It doesn't matter. I just collect them. This kind of thing doesn't matter. So at some point, while preparing this film, I say, what am I doing with all these things I gathered? Because I cannot put them in the film, all of them. And so I said to myself, well, maybe I had this idea to break the narrative in more to make it like a sketch a little bit, to make it not fragmentary, like an essay, like you say, like Adorno said, fragmentary, if that's the word. And then I would say maybe I can present these fragments. And then comes the question, how do you present these fragments? And I would say, well, what if I would use in a cheeky way, because this is not cinema, you know, this is a very literary way. What if I would make it in an alphabetical order with words, etc.? And then because I also have quotations, I have a folder with hundreds of quotations of all kinds for that project at that point, but also for other projects or just like that. So I said, maybe I look at these quotations and see if I can use it as well. So then came the idea to use cinema for these literary things, because I think here cinema is exactly like novels. Novels in literature, you know, in a poem, you cannot have a novel, right? You cannot have a novel in a poem, but in a novel, you can have a poem. And I think cinema is exactly like that. It's like a big ocean where you can have water from a river, water from a lake, water from something, and everything becomes the ocean. So in cinema, if you take images, photographs, graphics, texts, quotations, and you mix them together, they still remain cinema in a way. That's the idea. So it was all these ideas coming together, and also, of course, it was an homage to Flaubert, Dictionary of Received Ideas, etc. So all these things.
Now, in the film that we're seeing actually this afternoon, that's memories of the Eastern Front, there is almost the opposite of bad luck banging, because you are taking away many elements of cinema, almost leaving almost nothing, which is just some, you're filming old photographs, some of the captions on this album, and some communications between this regiment where that the album of photos belongs, from the Second World War. And that's all. In fact, there is not even sound.
Yeah. Well,
why is it silent, this film?
Yeah. Well, it's now people haven't seen this film, but well, we can speak about it. I would say that the first thing regarding that film, which is, as you say, I shot with a camera photographs from a photo album from the 40s, from the Second World War, where Romania with Nazi Germany together invaded Soviet Union, and Romania sadly took part also in a lot of extermination of civilian populations, especially Jews and also Gypsies, Roma. A lot of Roma population were deported there, and they died in concentration camps, etc. Well, but the film is also, if you want, and now speaking of the found poems that I showed, the book of Bernd Porter, of course, this book and my film as well has the origin, if you want, a philosophical origin in Marcel Duchamp. In Marcel Duchamp, who was the French painter that at some point, exactly 100 years ago, made this gesture of putting in galleries not his paintings, not his sculptures or drawings, but ready-mades objects that he'd found, a bicycle wheel or a urinal or I don't know, a shovel. All these things, he exposed them as art. And although it can be considered a joke with no importance, there is this book, Kant After Duchamp, by Thierry de Duve, a Belgian important art historian. He says this is the most difficult philosophical question regarding arts in the 20th century. And what is art and what is an artist, when you can expose this and call it art, and or a sculpture or a paintings, and this changes all our notions changes the ideas about what is beautiful, what is art, what is good, etc. So in a way, I wanted to, I follow this tradition, wanting or not, saying when I saw this album that the co-author of the film, who's a historian, Adrian Cioflâncă, showed it to me, I said, well, it's so full of things, these photographs and the way they are put there with the text, etc., that we only have to shoot it and present it, just like that. And then, of course, we discover that all of these photographs and texts represent an ideology which we are not in tune with, so we wanted to go against, and we broke the presentation of these albums with texts from other documents that shows exactly what is outside the frame of those images. And then we had long discussions about sound, the sound in the film. And we tried different ideas and different versions with music, with ambient sounds, with voiceovers. And at some point, and this is also the lesson of Stan Brakhage, I said, no, let's keep it silent, because anyway, it's a kind of primitive cinema, what we do. It's a kind of very primitive film. Even before cinema appears, it looks much older in technique. Even a kind of an older Romanian film critic phoned me 2 days ago and said, I saw this film and it's interesting, but it's not a film. And of course, here we got back to what we spoke before, how we define what a film is, etc. But I was thinking a lot about Brakhage and how Stan Brakhage considers that, and he kept his film silent because he considered that in order to see an image better, to really analyze it, to really look at it, it's better if you see it without sound, because the sound makes it much easier to grasp it. And without sound, it's you are forced to look at the image more. It's like if somebody cuts our sound now, probably it would be much more interesting to see us than to listen to us, because every detail becomes important. I mean, you have a lot of books behind you. I don't even know what they are, but because we speak, I cannot concentrate on that. If we take the sound out, I could maybe spot some of the books, this kind of thing. So because these images are so full of details, these photographs are so full of details, important details, we decided to keep it silent. So to offer the audience, to invite the audience to really look at them and analyze the photographs and not think of story or of sound, of ambience.
I also felt the sound kind of leaves you as an audience alone. It's as though the filmmaker let go of your hand.
Yes, maybe. I didn't think of that, but it could be something like that. And even I saw the film a few times with audience in cinema room, and it was quite interesting because at the beginning there's a little bit of movement because everybody has a problem. It's no sound for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes. But then if you accept, I believe that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, if you accept the proposition that the film is without sound, people enter in the rhythm of the montage of the film, and there's no problem about that, I think. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm right.
It also seems to me a kind of very strange remake of I Don't Care If We Go Down in History as Barbarians, which is a film you made a couple of years ago, which touches on some similar terrain, but in a way, to those who have not seen it, is really about negationism to me, to a great degree, that negationism, this did not happen, and even if it did, it happens everywhere, or there's nothing special, or let's forget about it. Let's talk about something else, and here I think this is like proof. This is proof. And this is why I found the use of silence very interesting, in that we are left alone with the proof, and we have to somehow do something with that. And at the same time, the silence to me evokes, I imagine this silence in Romanian society, surrounding these atrocious events, and especially the responsibility of, I don't know if such a thing, I don't think exists exactly, the collective responsibility. But I think it does when a society fails to assume something, that happened. If even in your own life, you say, no, this did not happen, and it did, something will turn out badly in some way. I don't know. Anyway, this is just a bit of an interpretation.
No, but it's a nice interpretation. This is a good idea. I didn't think of that, about the silence in the film, matching the silence in Romanian society towards these topics. But it's a nice interpretation. It is there. I mean, if it's, as you know, from your work for sure, and from others, it's a film is much more complex than what we think about it. It's an object which is much more complex, even if we want or not. So
Luckily.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true. It's because it's the technology makes it in such a way. Even our Zoom talk today, it's a film. No, we are making a film now, which is much more complex. I mean, it's very simple because it's something extremely simple. But in the same time, if you really think about it, and now there's a lot of essays or philosophical essays about Zoom. A friend of mine, Christian Ferencz-Flatz, who's a philosopher, and also we are making a film together. I think he wrote an essay about gesture on Zoom and how gestures change. So Zoom is also a form of cinema and of mise-en-scène, etc. So everything is much more complex. Now, the relation that you make with my other film, I Do Not Care If We Go Down in History as Barbarians. Well, of course, they are obviously related because both are reflections about history and about the atrocious past of Romania and the involvement of Romanian authorities and army in massacres, etc. But I think the link stops here because you say it's a proof. Well, it is a proof, but it is and it is not a proof because it's a construction in the same time. It's very the question of proof in cinema, it's a bit tricky, and especially I don't even have the philosophical training to discuss it in the digital cinema where everything is alphanumeric. It's you don't have a real connection between images and or you cannot have you don't necessarily have a connection between image and the object, and it's all a construction with numbers, with 1 and 0. All of a sudden, I think the nature of images change, and how can we consider a proof, something like that? It's a bit tricky, so I don't know the answer. It's something that troubles me and makes me to think a lot. But to be honest, I don't know how to answer it. I don't know how to. I still consider it, as you say, as a proof in a way. But if you think deeper, the things, the nature of this reality, because this is the nature of digital reality. It's the same thing. In Bad Luck Banging, I didn't theorize it. I didn't make a theory on it in the film, but it's true because they say, we saw the teacher having sex with that man, etc. But they didn't see the teacher. They saw an image, a digital image on a website, and is the image the person? It's not the person, of course. The image doesn't have anything to do with the person from a certain point of view. And this is one of the questions of that film of Bad Luck Banging, is what kind of nature has this digital space have? I'm in Romania, you're now in Argentina, here is summer, there is winter, and we are together on the space of this screen. I mean, our images are together and our voices, our sounds are there, but we are not there. So I think the ontological situation of this kind of space, of the digital space, of the cyberspace, it's really tricky. And this is, I think, why the film maybe is interesting a little bit. I don't know, because it shows this tension between somebody who exists alive in life and flesh and bones in front, interacting with other people, and the image, which is not the person and is going away and going astray like that, multiplying in 1 and zeros in alphanumeric language forever. So, yeah.
Regarding this sex scene, there is a first question from Martin Aliaga, one of the students. I would like to know about the film we saw yesterday, the initial sex scene. Was it directed or provoked, or was it something that the actors did on their own? What relation did this couple have in real life?
Well, actually, it was quite simple. First of all, the actress, Katia Pascariu, she's a great actress doing a lot of political theater and underground theater and social theater and educational theater. And not only that, but she's really, really brave. And from the beginning, I knew I want her to act, because I knew her from theater, and I knew her from other casting sessions for my previous films. I didn't work with her, but I wanted very badly to work it with her. So I thought the film from the beginning, I wanted Katia to act. Even when I was writing the script and the story, I was thinking of her. Then I met her, I spoke with her, I said, look, is this scene? And she said, I don't have any problem. My body belongs to art, and I want to use it for art purpose, so I don't have a problem. And for the man, for the husband, we took a porn actor. So the guy is a porn actor. Actually, I wanted some more fat, but all the porn actors we saw were really fit. And I'm a bit, I'm not very pleased by the fact that he looks great, a great body. I wanted someone, more. But and then I just told them what is to be done, and that they are supposed to do it. And actually, it was done very, very fast. It was done in 2 hours. Everything with the rehearsals and everything. Well, the funny thing, if he's to speak like that, because he was shooting, the man was shooting, and we had a lot of professional talk before. He was very professional. He said, so how long do you want me to last? Do you want me to come on her face, on her ass? Do you want me to fuck her in the ass? Do you want me? I said, no, just, a regular fuck like that. And he said, well, and then he had an erection problem. And I said, well, all of us men around the set, we said, well, if professionals have this problem, maybe for us it doesn't. And then he said, well, it never happened to me. I said, well, we all say these things, And then I said, but then it became really, really a problem, because we couldn't finish the scene because of that. So I said to him, if it happens, say something about it, do something, include it in the story, which he did. He's saying, come on, get it up, or something like that. And I think it becomes, and that was the only take with a full erection and with a full penetration scene. And it was interesting that I think it became much more interesting, because it becomes like a reason why they are doing this kind of tape. Maybe he has an erection problem and again he needs it. It was a bit like that. Sometimes hazard, the chaos, make the thing better.
Yeah. So that's one of the questions. I had while we see if there is more questions, I wanted to ask you something that I think you talk about with Roger Cosa in an interview regarding a writer that is not actually from Argentina, but we consider him Argentinian. This is Witold Gombrowicz.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Gombrowicz. Yeah.
Is there some influence in your work from Gombrowicz?
Well, I think very big. Although I don't know his works very well. I know only Ferdi Durke, and I love it. But I'm very much attracted by his spirit, by this spirit of irreverence. You said at the beginning something that pleased me, that you say you saw that the film is not very serious, etc. And for essay, well, I agree with that, and I think that the spirit of non-seriousness mixed with something serious, because I think my films are serious in a way, but mixed with non-serious elements, and I think this is a lesson. I don't know, from the avant-garde, from Buñuel, from James Joyce, from Godard, I don't know, from many people, and Gombrowicz, or Gombrowicz, as you pronounce it, as well. Because if you take Ferdi Durke, for instance, the things that really made me so happy about the novel and to laugh about it is the fact that, it's in 3 parts or 4 parts, I don't remember, which is split by 2 burlesque pieces which don't have any connection with the rest of the novel. And he even says at some point, I mean, the narrator says, now I'm in the 2nd chapter or 3rd chapter, and I want to introduce another story. And everybody tells me, you cannot put a short story into a novel. And he say, well, I show you I can put a short story into a novel. So here it is. And the short story starts there. So I think this irreverent spirit is something extremely important in all arts, but in cinema especially, because cinema, it becomes either commercial cinema, which is extremely serious for making money, even when it's not serious, and art house cinema, which is always serious because people depend on it, on their careers, awards, to be respectable. And to destroy this respectability, I think it's a very important element of cinema. So Gombrowicz, I think it's hugely important for this attitude that he has. He has, and also the fact that he never liked, which is something I also share, this kind of kitsch, sentimental literature. He has an essay called Against the Poets, which, I mean, it's not against all poets, of course, but it's about this kind of poetry, which is extremely sentimental and kitschy and patriotic, etc. So yeah.
So says you cannot write poetically about poetry, he says Gombrowicz.
Yes, and also I think it's obvious that and especially in cinema, I think it's true that whenever the filmmaker tries to be poetic, it becomes problematic. I think the real poetry of cinema comes from things which are not necessarily poetic by themselves. When somebody is shooting, I don't know, some like in many essay movies, some branch trees in the sun, and there's a music and a voiceover which is poetical. Well, I don't think that's a real poetry. I think you find more real poetry in a Rossellini film. You see.
Here there's more questions, and we are drawing to the end. How was the film received, Bad Luck Banging, in Bucharest and the Romanian public? Because it is very aggressive in a way towards Romanian society.
Well, yes, it is aggressive and it is not aggressive, because I think in a way well, it's a caricature, but you know, a caricature is supposed to be funny, and if it's not about you, it's funny. When it's about you, it's not funny. I remember that 2 years ago, I think Simona Halep, the Romanian tennis player, woman, won Roland Garros, and in Charlie Hebdo, the French satiric magazine, which was the target of the Islamist attack years ago, etc. So we all know about it, made a caricature, doesn't matter, about Simona Halep. And all of a sudden, Romania, it was in all the Romania media, etc. How is it possible that they mock our champion? You know, nobody has a problem if the mockery is about others. When it's about you, you would say. So keeping this in mind, of course, the film was received in a very complex way, actually, because it was and I think that's easy to understand. Very much some people were very much against the film in a very violent way, leaving the theater, leaving the cinema, because it won the Golden Bear, and that made it a kind of a very popular film for real. I mean, people really wanted to see it. So it was just the cinemas were open after the COVID lockdown, and everybody went to see it. It was quite a lot of people who was going to see it. It was piracy immediately, so some people saw it in a pirated version as well. Doesn't matter. And so it was really a lot of interest in the film. So a lot of people rejected it. A few people accepted it and defended it. And I think that the category which I found to be the most interesting one, because I think these two are, of course, very obvious why, you know. Very conservative people would say this is a terrible, stupid film, like a woke, progressive movie, etc. This kind of shit. But the most interesting ones, I think, it came from let's say intellectuals or educated audience, a very educated audience that would say, we don't have anything against the ideas of the film. We don't have anything against, we are not reactionaries or conservatives or whatever, but this is not a film. They would say, this is not a film. This is what is dictionary. Why is it in 3 parts? Why is that it's a sitcoms? Why? So people were. This was quite shocking for me to see how many educated people would reject the film because of the form, not because of the content, the so-called content. I don't know. I cannot separate them, but you know, for the sake of discussion, let's separate them. So I think that was quite shocking to see. And because the film is so mixed, some people see only parts of it. That, for instance, just today appeared by a Romanian critic, a young guy, I don't know, I think he's intelligent, etc. And he was very much against the film, analyzing only the 3rd part of the film. He said, let's go over the 1st and the 2nd part, and let's analyze the discourses in the 3rd part, where, you know, the filmmaker doesn't have the trust in the Romanian society, etc., etc. He's cynical, etc. But I mean, that's one part of the film. How can you isolate? How can you say, I don't care about the 1st part, I don't care about the 2nd? For me, the film is the 3rd part. That's ridiculous, because the work of art is complete, and you have to see it as a complete object. It doesn't make sense to analyze it in part, you know.
There is another question regarding how was it like to shoot on the streets of Bucharest in the middle of 2020 with a 35mm camera?
Oh, well, first of all, that's a question of which relates the attitude that you have towards cinema, and I think I said that in the discussion with Roger as well, because he asked me, even when immediately after I shot the movie, he made a material about this, and I would say, you know, I'm not the kind of filmmaker that I would put the crew or the actors to risk for the sake of the movie. You know, when you read these kind of stories about Werner Herzog, you know, people going into the jungle, getting caught by snakes or dying typhoid fever, or I don't know, or Apocalypse Now, where people died, you know, Filipino people died because of the explosions in the movie, etc. Well, I mean, with all respect for these great filmmakers, much greater than I can ever be, I would never do that. I mean, I would prefer not to do the film than to risk the life of the people. So in this case, with the COVID, before vaccination appeared, it was quite tricky because we wanted to make the film, and in the same time we had vulnerable people like sick people or who had families, and they say, look, I would like to come in the film, but I would like to have the maximum protection possible. So I said, okay, I will offer the maximum protection possible, which means testing in a regular way, and even the masks. I would say, well, I don't care, because sometimes people, producers say, well, are you sure you should with the people with the mask on? This, nobody will look at the film. And I said, well, you know, why not? Because this is the moment, this is the situation we live in, this is how it should happen. This is how life it is now. And the film was meant, I wanted the film to capture the life of that moment. So I offer, but I also did it not only because to capture the moment, but also to offer the actors the maximum protection possible, you know. And regarding the street shoot, it's a good question, because I have a nice anecdote, I think, about it. I think it's nice. We didn't have the mayor permit in order to make a professional film in the street, especially with a big 35mm camera. You have to have permission, and I think it's because of my previous films, and because it was the elections, the campaign for the mayor, exactly in the same time. They I didn't have the permit. So I said to Ada Solomon, to my producer, what do we do, because we cannot wait. So I said, let's just shoot faster with a smaller crew. And if police comes and gives a fine, well, that's it. You pay it, and that's it. It's 10 days of shooting, or 9 days. And actually, in the first day, because still Romania, I think it's something related with the communist dictatorship, where people were extremely suspicious of everybody around. So, you know, if you go with a photo camera or with a movie camera in the street and shoot something, people become very suspicious and ask, what are you shooting? Why are you shooting me? Why are you shooting in front of my store? Who are you? Do you have a permit? So we knew that this is going to happen. And in the first day, I think I made a joke. Somebody came and said, what are you shooting? And I had this idea as a joke. I said, we are shooting a commercial film for the mayor office, for the office of the mayor. And the mayor at that time was a woman. And they look at our actress with her gray suit, you know, and nobody questioned if it's true or false, and nobody asked for permits. So whenever somebody came and asked us, what are you shooting here? I would say, we shoot something for the mayor's office. And so nobody say, I want to see the permit, because so, you know, I think the biggest it was the biggest possible lie. You know, we didn't have the permit from the mayor, and we said we shoot for the mayor. You know, it was really, but it worked.
That's wonderful. One last question is regarding the title. Why loony porn? This is Iris.
Well, you know, it's the English title is a literal translation of the Romanian title, but the Romanian title, the words in the Romanian title have a much bigger meaning, especially which is related to Romanian society and also to history, because Romanian title is Babardeală cu bucluc sau Porno Balamuc. Now, Babardeală, which means fucking or to fuck, coger, I don't know how you say it, but not in the most vulgar. It's like banging. It's not like fucking. So it's not the most vulgar word, but it's also a word that has a vulgar connotation, and the vulgar, it's considered vulgar, and also it's gypsy. It's a gypsy word. And since Romanian society is quite racist, it's not, I mean, it's the word that a civilized person would never use. So much that when the film came out, there were film critics saying, I didn't even know this word before. It was like, I didn't know it exists. I'm so pure that, and also in TV, they didn't say when the film won the Golden Bear in Berlin, they would say, the new film of Radu Jude won the Golden Bear. They didn't say the title of the film in some TV station. Okay, so, and then bukluk is means trouble or bad luck, or when you're in trouble, but is also a word that it's used in art, in artistic titles, in very low boulevard theater and boulevard television, so to speak. So for instance, a holiday with bukluk, a bad luck holiday, would be a title that would be the lowest sitcom or the lowest theater. So I wanted to have a bad taste title. So this is the first part, Babardala cu bukluk. And I wanted a second part, not in order to mark that the film is not it's a bit messy. I wanted in the structure, I wanted the messy title. So, or porno balamuk. Babardala cu bukluk sau porno balamuk. So porno is porno, but balamuk, which we translated as loony porn, is a little bit more complicated because it's related also to the history of press in Romania. Balamuk means also is a Turkish Ottoman word and means not really crazy, means madhouse, crazy house. And you would say about the balamuk that, if my kid is making a mess in the room, you would say he made a balamuk there, like it's crazy. But it was also in the 90s and 2000s, it was a very important magazine, like a porn, soft porn magazine called Sexy Balamuk. So the title is making a nod, a connection, Porno Balamuk to Sexy Balamuk, which was this magazine, a very low porn magazine, which you would find on the kiosk in the street. It doesn't exist anymore. So
that's fabulous.
It's a very complicated title.
It's an essay, the title itself.
Gerard Genet said the title is the proxenate of the work of art.
Excellent. With that, I think we come to the end, Radu, of this wonderful discussion, and we will see you next week for the seminar for the participants in the film program. I will just now add in Spanish, agradecer a Radu, Jude, por su participación y su muy amable conversación, y también recordarles a ustedes que vamos a ver esta tarde la película creo que es la última de Radu Jude, que estuvo en el Festival de Berlín de este año, que se llama Memorias del Frente Oriental. Esta tarde...
Un cortometraje.
Es un cortometraje, un mediometraje. A las 19 horas en la Universidad de Itela, pueden ver el link en nuestra página. Así que con eso cerramos la tarde. Thank you so much, Radu. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Muchas gracias. Why is not your name the Tesha? Because double L is Esh.
Because it's Italian.
Okay.
We have many. All if you look at the list of participants, we all have very different names. Very few Spanish names, in fact.
I know.
So thank you again. Gracias a todos.